This video shows the Airflow inheritance graph. Apache Airflow is a platform created by the community to programmatically author, schedule, and monitor workflows. A DAG, Directed Acyclic Graph, is a collection of tasks with directional dependencies. A DAG also has a schedule, a start date and an end date, optional. For each schedule, say daily or hourly. The DAG needs to run each individual tasks as their dependencies are met. Certain tasks have the property of depending on their own past, meaning that they can't run until their previous schedule and upstream tasks are completed. DAGs essentially act as namespaces for tasks. A task _id can only be added once to a DAG. Logging mixin is convenience superclass to have a logger configured with the class name. Base executor class to inherit for concrete executors such as Celery, Kubernetes, Local, Sequential, etc. Base auth manager class to derive in order to implement concrete auth managers. Auth managers are responsible for any user management related operations such as login, logout, auths. Hook lineage collector is a base class for collecting hook lineage information. It is used to collect the input and output assets of a hook execution. Skip mixin a mixin to skip tasks instances. Branch mixin is utility helper which handles the branching as one-liner. Base trigger is base class for all triggers. A trigger has two contexts it can exist in. Inside an operator. When it's passed to task deferred, actively running in a trigger worker. We use the same class for both situations. And rely on all trigger classes to be able to return the arguments, possible to encode with Airflow JSON, that will let them be reinstantiated elsewhere. Templater renders the template fields of object. Abstract operator is common implementation for operators, including unmapped and mapped. This base class is more about sharing implementations, not defining a common interface. Unfortunately, it's difficult to use this as the common base class for typing due to base operator carrying too much historical baggage. Base operator is abstract base class for all operators. Since operators create objects that become nodes in the DAG, base operator contains many recursive methods for DAG crawling behavior. To derive from this class, you are expected to override the constructor and the execute method. Mapped operator object representing a mapped operator in a DAG. Decorated operator wraps a Python callable and captures args, quargs when called for execution. Python decorated operator wraps a Python callable and captures args, quargs when called for execution. Class job is the ORM class representing jobs stored in the database. Jobs are processing items with state and duration that aren't task instances. Base is a declarative base class from Sklalchemy. Task instances store the state of a task instance. This table is the authority and single source of truth around what tasks have run and the state they are in. The SQL Alchemy model doesn't have a SQL Alchemy foreign key to the task or DAG model deliberately to have more control over transactions. Database transactions on this table should ensure double triggers and any confusion around what task instances or aren't ready to run even while multiple schedulers may be firing task instances. DAG run is invocation instance of a DAG. Base model is base pydantic model for REST API. Variable response, base info response, base pool, XCOM response, connection response and DAG response of serializers. Config is list of config sections with their options. XCOM collection is list of XCOMs with metabase activity is the identity token for this workload. Version info is version information. Config section is list of config options within a section. DAG schedule asset reference, task outlet asset reference are reference serializers for assets. Trigger is base trigger class. Triggers are a workload that run in an asynchronous event loop shared with other triggers, and fire off events that will unpause deferred tasks, start linked DAGs, etc. They are persisted into the database and then rehydrated into a triggerer process, where many are run at once. We model it so that there is a many-to-one relationship between task and trigger. For future deduplication logic to use. Rows will be evicted from the database when the triggerer detects no active tasks, DAGs using them. Events are not stored in the database, when an event is fired. The triggerer will directly push its data to the appropriate task, DAG. Task instance dependencies is base class for depending models linked to task instance. Asset event is a table to store assets events. Lazy select sequence is list-like interface to lazily access a database model query. The intended use case is inside a task execution context, where we manage an active SQL Alchemy session in the background. Lazy asset event select sequence is list-like interface to lazily access asset event rows. Asset triggered timetable is timetable that never schedules anything. This should not be directly used anywhere, but only set if a DAG is triggered by assets. _trivial timetable is some code reuse for trivial timetables that has nothing complex. Timetable is protocol that all timetable classes are expected to implement. _data interval timetable is basis for timetable implementations that schedule data intervals. This kind of timetable classes create periodic data intervals from an underlying schedule representation, for example a cron expression, or a time delta instance, and schedule a DAG run at the end of each interval. Anonymizer is anonymizer protocol. Timer protocol is type protocol for stats logger. Timer that records duration. An optional sends to stats D backend. This class lets us have an accurate timer with the logic in one place, so that we don't use datetime math for duration. It is error prone. Task is declaration of a task decorated callable for type checking. An instance of this type inherits the call signature of the decorated function wrapped in it, not exactly since it actually returns an XCOM arg, but there's no way to express that right now. And provides two additional methods for task mapping. Expandable factory is protocol providing inspection against wrapped function.